The Canadian Grand Prix provided a rollercoaster of emotions as the changeable weather created the best race of the year so far. With the pitwalls working overtime to try and make the most of the conditions, Mercedes seemed to be the biggest winner heading into the Grand Prix, with George Russell on pole after setting the joint fastest time first in qualifying. Hamilton with only 2.28 tenths of a second off Russell's time, but with the grid as close as they are, that time was only good enough for 7th place. Despite an impressive performance during the Grand Prix, Hamilton gave a brutal assessment of his Grand Prix, angry at himself and his team for the decisions they made. Today, I'll check out why Mercedes are disappointed in their performance in Canada, despite it being their best race all season, so don't go anywhere. Mercedes' weekend could not have got off to a better start. Hamilton topped the final free practice of the weekend after a rainy Friday interrupted the team's usual run plan. Then in qualifying, Russell went fastest in Q2 with a 1:11.742 before taking pole position with a 1:12.0. Verstappen was able to match that time late on in the session, but as Russell had set his time first, he took pole position. It was Mercedes' first front row start of the season and gave them a great platform to fight from in the race. Qualifying in Canada was especially important considering the weather. Pole position starts you on the right-hand side of the track, which is marginally uphill of the left side of the grid, where the second-place car starts. With it being on the racing line as well, it had far more rubber down, and with most cars passing over that spot on the formation lap, it was by far the drier side of the grid. Together, those factors meant that George had a far better starting position than Verstappen, and he made the most of it on the intermediate tyre, getting away cleanly heading out of Turn 2 in first position. At the end of the day on Saturday, George Russell said his superb pole position at the Canadian Grand Prix was the start of something for our season. While Toto Wolff was optimistic, the team are finally going in the right direction in F1's current era of rules. It was only the third time since the beginning of the new regulations in 2022 that Mercedes had sat on pole position. Russell's pole is just his second in F1 and Mercedes' first since Lewis Hamilton's in Hungary last July. We said it in Monaco that we hope this is the start of something for our season, and I think it is, said Russell, in reference to the encouragement Mercedes felt about their latest upgrade package, which was fitted to the car in Monaco. The car has been so quick this weekend, he added. The team have done an amazing job bringing all those upgrades to the car, and finally this hard work is translating into results. While converting that pole position into a race win was never going to be easy, with Verstappen starting alongside him and the pacey McLarens occupying the second row, George will have gone to sleep dreaming of a second career win. When he made it around the first lap holding on to first place, and with over a second of free air between him and Max behind him, he must have been thinking that he might even pull it off. By the end of lap 2, he'd extended that lead over 2 seconds, then over 2.5 seconds a lap after. Though Mercedes might wonder what could have been if they'd started on the wet tyres like the Haas cars did, after watching Kevin Magnussen make up 9 places in those same 3 laps. In the end though, George's excellent qualifying and strong early lead weren't enough for him, as the pace of the Red Bull and the McLaren started to show. As he prepared to leave Montreal on Sunday night, he was saying the race felt like a missed opportunity, despite his eventual third-place finish. The 26-year-old Briton was ruining what he said were 2 mistakes, but in fact were 3, that prevented him from fighting for what could have been Mercedes' first win since the 2022 Sao Paulo Grand Prix. Russell had a point. He had cost himself significant time with some errors that were potentially decisive. But could he actually have won? Maybe for a few minutes we dreamt about it, team boss Toto Wolff said, but in reality, probably not. Russell may have led the first 20 laps, but Verstappen and then Norris put him under increasing pressure as the track dried out. By lap 21, Norris was passed using the DRS on the back straight, and that led to the first of Russell's errors. As the McLaren passed him, he outbraked himself and missed the final chicane, and Verstappen was able to slip past 2 on the exit. First became third in just 1 corner. After the track dried enough for the field to swap to dry tyres, George looked to be closing on Max again, only to cut the chicane at turns 8 and 9 and drop behind Norris, completely halting his advance. A second safety car gave Mercedes another shot. They pitted Russell and Hamilton for fresh tyres, while Verstappen and Norris stayed out. So now the Mercedes drivers had a 10-lap tyre advantage with 11 laps to go, albeit they were now lying 4th and 5th, also behind the second McLaren of Oscar Piastri. But then came the third error from Russell, and one that is becoming characteristic of his driving late on in races. Battling Piastri for third place and with the laps running out, he tried an overambitious move at the final chicane on the outside and again took to the runoff, costing him more time and a position to Hamilton. He fought back to pass both his teammate and Piastri before the end, but any hope of catching Verstappen was gone. Those late race mistakes have become a feature of George's driving, the worst being that crash from third on the final lap of the 2023 Singapore Grand Prix. George was honest after the race, admitting that there was more for the taking in Canada if he had avoided those errors. "I am disappointed with my own performance, but there's a lot to take away," Russell said. "That mistake with Oscar when I tried overtaking him and I lost the position to Lewis cost us at least P2 and maybe going to fight with Max later in the race. For me, it was just one too many mistakes at key moments that cost us a shot of fighting with those two toward the end of the race. But, we'll take all the positives from the weekend. First podium, first pole position of the year, and excited moving forwards." In the end, despite it being Mercedes' best weekend by far this season, the team felt like they missed opportunities. It was a feeling that was echoed by Hamilton, who started to look more and more like a peripheral figure at the team as they start to shut him out before he departs at the end of the season. It was a pretty disastrous afternoon yesterday, talking about qualification, and today the race was shocking, Hamilton said. "So I can't say that I'm happy with it. I would say that I'm happy we are progressing, and that is the positive I take from this weekend." Part of Hamilton's anger was that the team told him to take the hard tyre at the late pit stop while George took the medium. He said the lack of information from the team was a problem. George was on a much quicker tyre at the end. He was on the mediums and I was on the hards. I didn't know he was going to the mediums or I would have stayed out. When being called in for that pit stop, he actually asked for the soft tyre, but with no new sets available, the team told him that he had to take the hard tyre instead. They were worried that with 10 laps to go, and testing showing that the soft tyre wasn't holding up in race conditions, that he would destroy the softs and lose positions late on because of it. It was his own performance that Hamilton was most upset with though. "It was a pretty bad weekend for me," said Hamilton, despite converting a 7th on the grid into 4th at the finish. "Lots of mistakes, and just overall really poor, fighting for 4th place when I should have been further up. It's great we're looking like we're closer to the front, but I have some work to do to improve. Once I start driving with my head, I should be able to get some better results." A result like this is a good sign for Mercedes. Clearly something clicked in Canada and the gap to the front closed a shocking amount. But will this just be a flash in the pan, a one-off, or are Mercedes about to make what had become a 3-team fight at the front between Red Bull, Ferrari and McLaren a 4-way one? This could have just been a one-off result with the track and conditions favouring Mercedes more than others, and the team are aware of that. After countless false dawns over the past 3 years, they don't want to jump the gun. Russell said, "I think we need to see how their," talking about Red Bull, "performance turns out in Barcelona, which is a little bit more of a conventional circuit. But this pace increase that we've seen from us this weekend, it hasn't been a surprise to us because all the numbers back at the factory told us we're going to be finding a big chunk of performance with these upgrades. So Barcelona is going to be interesting for everybody, but I'm confident we can be in the fight." With 2 weeks before the paddock descends on Spain, there's time for Mercedes to review what happened in Canada and try to repeat their success and avoid repeating their failures. Can they find this performance again, or was it just a one-off this time around? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.